Fight back. Fight back.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into this edition of the Storm Surge. I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game, here with BP, ready to talk some Orlando Storm. Stormtroopers, I know there's been all sorts of crap and nonsense, dare I even say whining, about this past week's performance. And I know you had plenty to say about it, BP. The BP breakdown was absolutely fantastic with what you walked through. And all, it was a good time explaining all of that. However, the league, the UFL proper, has responded to some of these whinings. And before we get into this, I know we're opening the show with it, but it's mostly, I mean, listen, it's the past game. The Storm are already 3-0. I get it, it's in the past, but considering that the league has moved this quickly to make a change, wanted to drop in here Dean Blandino's explanation of what rule changes. Yes, they're changing the rule already. I'm sorry, UFL fans. We'll get right to it right here.
We heard you loud and clear. Look, we had good intentions with this rule. It was designed with player safety in mind. These guys are out there for 3+ hours, and we wanted to limit the number of additional snaps in overtime. But the game just can't end on a penalty. That doesn't work. And here's the thing about the UFL. We're not afraid to change to make the game better. So here's what's changing with our overtime rule. If the defense fouls during a try that's no good, the ball goes to the 1. If they foul again on any other try at any point during overtime, the ball goes to the half-yard line. If they foul again, it goes to the quarter, and so on and so on. The penalty makes it easier for the offense to score, but it doesn't automatically award a score. If you want to win, you got to get the ball in the end zone, not rely on your opponent to commit a foul. That's the UFL. We move the game forward.
Now, I give Dean all the points in the world for going full politician, and I'll even say this out loud, because if I don't, there's been too many times as a student of the game in all the years I've been doing this, BP, where I've been pro leagues, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, whatever, listening to the fans, right? Even Mike Rapoli in his Twitter, quote tweeting this explanation, says the following: the UFL won't just be a league for the fans, it'll be built with the fans. Leadership, transparency, accountability, no words but actions. You'll see. Thank you for making us better. LFG. And thus the quote endeth. But BP, there's too many good points you made in BP's breakdown that were mentioned even by Dean Blandino in this breakdown. The player safety, the needing to end the bleeding game sometime this evening, perhaps.
Yep.
In this week's Zoom call with Coach Becht, he even cited the rosters are only so big in the UFL. There aren't practice squads that you could pull from. It's not just player safety from the point of the welfare of the players, BP. It's just a dang fiscal practicality that there's only so many players on the roster that are here. So mentioning all these things, your response to the move as explained by Dean Blandino. Oh boy.
Well, I guess that means DTR is going to start a quarterback this week, right?
Oh, Jesus Lord.
Well, I went there. Yeah, I went there. No, I went there.
The fans don't have that much pull, but go ahead.
No, I went there. I said, because, listen, if you're going to cave to them now, what's to say? Okay, look, I'm all about the rule change, right? Because I did leave that open to interpretation. You know, it's okay. Maybe a rule change review is in order here, but to do it so quickly, was it that bad that we needed to do that right now? Was the fan backlash so ugly that we needed to make an immediate change? Because guess what they said on social media right after that? Oh, so does that mean we move the Louisville-Orlando game to a tie? Shut up. God.
5 minutes in, we got to shut up. Let's go. And listen, BP, here's where I think you're absolutely correct, okay? We know the problem they were solving for, all right? It's the blitz and foul scenario, right? For those of us who are frustrated with the New England Patriots of yore, who aren't really all that in a bag of chips beyond blitz and foul on defense and an overrated Tom Brady, I said what I said. And see, now I'm going to get people to hate me, right? No, listen, joking aside, like, the intent was to stop the defense from just fouling the bejesus out of somebody.
Correct.
To keep themselves in the game.
Right.
People complained when your Kansas City Chiefs won a Super Bowl and Bradbury obviously fouled somebody to put the game into a very simple place where it was a very simple kick. And you know, listen, maybe don't foul the guy. Right? What about that?
Yeah.
Where is that in the rule book? Maybe don't foul the guy.
So as the song says, don't hand me no lines and keep your hands to yourself. You know, I'm sorry. You know, I agree with the notion that, yes, you should not end the game on a penalty. Okay. So that part of the rule makes a lot of bleeding sense. Okay. Can't argue with that because it was anticlimactic. You know, I admit it, you know, and I even said as much too, you know, it's okay. Yeah. But what the rule was designed to do with player safety was to not to extend the game any further than it needed to be extended, right? So because we invariably, let's say that we applied the rule into the Louisville game. So, all right, Orlando gets set up. They don't get in, right? So then we go back and do this again. Louisville hadn't been successful. And now what's to say, oh, that Orlando couldn't do the same thing and prevent it. Right. And then they stuff them at the 1 yard line and then wash, rinse, repeat. So it's like, okay, guys, maybe the issue isn't necessarily the rule that they had in overtime. Maybe it's the overtime setup. Maybe. And hey, since we're listening to fans, UFL family, why don't we just go to the Kansas overtime, put the ball at the 25 and run the series like that? You know, because now you're not worried about a shootout. You just run the college overtime setup. You know, if you want to limit it to say, okay, you know, like the college game does, you know, the first 2 periods are open. And then, you know, after that, you start doing the 2-point conversion thing. Okay. Because I guarantee you'll probably have a lot more games end in that second overtime series than you would in a shootout. Because it's already statistically difficult to make a 2-point conversion from wherever you put it. Yeah. Right. And you have to practice special plays for that stuff. And oh, by the way, and I know coaches talked about this too. They only practice. What they said, 3 full days of practice this week. Most NFL teams, they're not doing 3 days worth of practice. They're doing a hell of a lot more than that. So, you know, how often are you going to get to work in this scenario and work it effectively? That's where you get the quality of play thing. You know, honestly, if I wanted to submit for some rule changes, I think we need to expand training camp. We probably need to let these guys practice a lot more and get better at their craft so they can avoid situations where they're fouling to stop games and being sloppy. You know, maybe there's some other things we could have done. But, you know, I honestly, in my heart of hearts, I really think that this was the UFL bowing to fan pressure and the fans succeeded. Good for you guys. DTR still not starting at quarterback. Don't even dream it. But, you know, they pushed and whined and did something because apparently, you know, I get it. I get what you're marketing. I get what you're trying to do. You want people to be engaged in this. And you want them to feel like they have a part of this and to make this their third place in the spring. All of those are nice, warm, fuzzy feelings. But when it boils down to it, you can't just make that change in the middle of a friggin' season. You know, you don't have enough of a sample size. This happened once. Yeah. Okay. Was it crap
for a while now?
Yeah, for 2 or 3 years now. Yeah. So since the league's been in existence. So it happened once. Okay. Was it crappy? Was it anticlimactic? Yes. All of those things are true. But does that warrant an immediate change? No. I think that could have been a rules discussion because then instead of making the knee-jerk reaction, oh God, we got to change the rule, that sucks. Instead of making that quick reflex, you sit down and you make a methodical look at it and go, the body of the season, this is what happened in overtime periods. And even though we didn't get the largest sample of overtime because it didn't happen as frequently, we still looked at what we got and it's okay, that rule's kind of garbage. So maybe we don't need to necessarily change that rule per se. Maybe we change the rule, but then we alter our overtime format. You get a much more of a macro look at it, as opposed to just going, okay, we had one incident where everybody on social media went blah, and we changed the rule. I just don't think that's smart. Now, hey, I'm not the guy that runs the team. I don't own the league. I don't have that kind of money. So, fine. He can make that business decision. It's his money to gain or lose at that point. But just from having a larger sample size of football, than most people have, I guess, I just don't think you need to make that quick of a decision, because guess what? Now everybody's going to think that the next issue that comes up, that the fans can immediately go to social media. And if it's something that they don't like, even though that half of them have never put on a football uniform or pads or anything in their life,
or even watched the UFL,
or even really watched the UFL. Yeah, they literally jumped on the bandwagon 10 minutes ago. Go, man, that's why this league trash. Well, you did. Shut up. There's two. I just don't. I don't want to hear that anymore, guys. It's the same level of nonsense. Tell me you don't know ball without telling me you don't know ball. Well, you just did. So at that point, stuff it. But I will concede, for the logical thought process here that we're having it. I will concede that yes, that rule needed to be reviewed, probably needed to be tossed. Too soon to make that decision. Let the season play out. Let's see if it happens again. Because how do we know that teams wouldn't have adjusted? They'd be like, okay, you saw what happened in that Orlando-Louisville game, right? Okay, none of you is going to have that happen to you, right? Get your hands off the go for the ball, not the change the way you play.
Coverage, right? Play more physical at the line, have press coverage, which is more entertaining to watch, by the way.
Yes.
And make that answer to it. Change of strategy is what I would have liked to have actually seen long term. And that's the best thing about the knee-jerk defense that you're making here. And I would also add this. By the way, y'all thought I was just whistling Dixie when I mentioned that ties should be okay. The only real solution to any of this that prevents teams from relying on fouling to keep themselves alive, that's worried about player safety and ends the game in a timely fashion, is in fact to allow ties. That's the best answer, not this crap of we keep moving it closer and closer and closer. That solves precisely nothing and leaves the problem that they were trying to solve still in place at the end of the day. And listen, we both said it. It's a short on the Storm Surge YouTube channel. The subscribers have seen it, so maybe you should subscribe if you want to. But the fact that there's still blitz and foul that you can get away with it is my problem. The fact that people can break the rules to their advantage and still gain an advantage, rather, in doing so is what I can't get past here. It's a blatant overlook, and it's just wildly unfortunate. I think the biggest reason they did this, BP, isn't just the griping, but the what might be the biggest game of the year against your two newer franchises, right, was decided this way. Yeah. If it didn't end up being like the ending to the movie, Unbreakable, there we go, where Bruce Willis and Sam J were doing the thing and the ending was absolutely terrible, nobody would have cared. Now, I could make also the point that if they blocked that safety that snuck in and, got past the second level, we wouldn't be having this conversation either.
Run the damn ball.
Oh, you're gonna maybe flash the graphic already?
No. Okay, fine. It's fine. Go ahead. You did it. I was going to say,
see the whole thing.
Going to save that for a later usage, but sure, run the damn ball. I mean, yeah. Well, and the long and short of it now is that what's done is done. So the league has decided to move on with it, and that's life. I have my disappointment feeling with it, but something, fine. I hope that we never have to see overtime in a Storm game again. I hope that they finish the job, and from looking ahead at what this Birmingham team did against St. Louis last week, they have a prime opportunity to do the same. But we have some things that we're talking about in a running order here. So
yeah, I was about to say, speaking of moving on and getting past things, Lamar Jackson, the cornerback, announced as going on to IR with an injury. You may remember him from such plays as "Not today, no" against the Columbus Aviators in Week 1, but had some excellent plays against the Kings, such as that were this past week in Louisville. Unfortunately, he'll be on IR. They've picked up Nate Brooks to fill the gap, a perpetual player of the football. Not a whole lot of stats on him, but nonetheless, a guy with experience hitting the roster. That can't necessarily be a bad thing to keep things rolling. And I feel compelled, as somebody who also covers the Jacksonville Jaguars on the Duval Dive with Travis D. Holmes, my personal champion. Former Jaguar James Robinson joins the Louisville Kings. So for all the injuries they've experienced, getting a guy like that with some experience couldn't hurt them all that much, I would think. So
it's
yeah,
a great find for them too, man. He's going to fit in really well in the Louisville scheme, honestly. And Nate Brooks, to his credit, he's Mr. UFL. He spent lots of times on practice squads and getting waived by the league. I mean, he's been back and forth and back and forth. He could potentially be a Mr. Spring Ball. And I'd be good with that because, he's a guy from North Texas. He had a decent career with the Mean Green. And, it's very likely that he could be a spring fixture. He spent some time with Baltimore, I'm not Baltimore. He did spend some with Baltimore, but with Birmingham in the UFL, was on the Michigan Panthers roster, started out with St. Louis, but then was released. So he was planning on being in the UFL and they let him go, but now they've brought him back. So this is, again, a back to work situation for him. Maybe this is his shot to establish himself as a spring fling. I would love to see that from him. It looks like he struggled to stay on NFL rosters. Maybe this is an opportunity for him to solidify his love for football and to be out there on the field with a very talented defense. The Orlando Storm have kind of made themselves known as a break, don't bend, or bend, don't break defense. They need to actually stop bending, and they can't do that against Matt Corral this week. Even though he liked to throw to people in the wrong jersey. We need to address that later. But, I think he'll be a good fit at corner. Lamar Jackson's a significant loss. He's going to be down for at least 4 games, which is most of the rest of the season now. So if he gets healthy, we could have him back by any potential playoff. And, of course, we'll see how Nate Brooks jumps into Anthony Beck's overall scheme. I think he'll fit in well if he buys into the system and, pays attention to what he's told and gets the practice reps in. He should plug in right away and make an immediate impact on this defense, which has some opportunities to continue to get better as time goes on. But, once again, Nate Brooks, good Texas guy. I had some stats on him. He was a preseason All-Conference USA in 2017. He started 8 games with them, finishing with 31 tackles. Have a little bit of an injury bug, was kind of undersized in college. He was 150 pounds, but then he bulked up a little bit as he finished off, started all 13 games in his senior season, beginning against SMU. He recorded 6 picks, 67 tackles, and 10 PBUs. He got second team All-Conference USA selection, and he was a runner-up for the Jim Thorpe Award. So the guy didn't exactly, fade into obscurity in college. He made a name for himself and made an impact and was good enough to move to another level. Just couldn't stand on an NFL roster much beyond the practice squad and got waived a lot. Yeah. So here's, but he did have some success in the UFL. So hopefully this will stick with him, and hopefully he'll be another household name for the Orlando Storm in replacement of Lamar Jackson. And maybe if Jackson comes back, there's a roster spot for Brooks. If he proves himself, he can be into that fold too and be a part of a secondary that's getting better every week.
And BP, we were talking earlier in the show about limited practice for this group. I think these games against Louisville have been a very interesting way to sort of practice against a tough defense in and of itself. Yeah. And you even alluded to it, with some of the clips you had, even from last week's show. I think you mentioned it, talking with Jeff Sharon last week, the voice of the Storm, who you'll hear over the PA announcer here on the 25th when they come back to play Coach's Battlehawks eventually, former team, of course. But I actually asked Coach Beck about what Louisville is as kind of a preparatory force, and it became a sermon about how good he thinks the Kings are. Checking in to listen here. Phil is 0-3 and they're in the rear view, but one of the 3 losses is to the Birmingham Stallions in a game they just as easily could have won to open the year. With that in mind, what intel, what have you seen? Obviously, you can't give us the playbook, but what have you seen in the Louisville Kings and what they did to nearly beat the Stallions in week 1?
Louisville's good, man. I'm telling you, like they may win 3. I'm just telling you now. People want to just shame on them because they've lost 3 games. Like, that is a good defense. Jamie Sharper has those dudes playing. They are a physical front. And man, they tackle well. And that was a challenge now. And I'm telling you, like, I don't know who they play this week, but I'm telling you now, look out. Mark it down in a couple weeks. Like, Coach Begg said that they were going to win some games. So as long as Chris can keep them together, it's tough when you lose, right? You can play hard, but man, the morale, and I learned a lot over the years about, had my first 2-game losing streak last year. That was tough. Like I had not had that yet, in the first 2 seasons. And, we're able to run off 6 in a row. Not only that, we had a backup quarterback in those games. So, you learn as you go. And I hear the things that are coming out of Chris's mouth about that football team, and, they got talent too. So, they're going to be a problem moving forward. We love that. We love the fact that they're going to go beat up on all these other teams as we move into our season.
Something that sounded awfully familiar. That might have been the Beck effect, but he sounded an awful like BP's ABCs during the breakdown earlier in the week. Yeah, listen, and that's what I'm getting to here, BP, is say what you will about the practice schedule in the UFL. The Storm had other preparation to play a group with a tough defensive front and a dangerous quarterback that you could possibly corral into making mistakes. Sounds familiar, right?
I think I might have heard something like that before. So, and to what Coach is saying about who Louisville was playing, they're playing the Houston Gamblers, who were not doing the best so far, coming into a Thursday night week 4 matchup. And as of the time we are recording this, the game is still live. They're in the 4th quarter right now. Louisville led at the half 16-6. The Gamblers have then since put on 16 unanswered points until the Kings drop a field goal in the 4th. At present, as I'm looking at the score right now, it is 22-19. Louisville is down. And it all started with field goals from Louisville and Houston. But I tell you what, Louisville kicked a 59-yarder to start this game.
1 point short of 4, or 1 yard short of a point.
Yeah, I mean a 59-yarder. And Browns kicked a 52-yarder. Talia Tungalovoa, who's now starting at the quarterback position for Houston, he actually was slated to play in the Indoor Football League and got signed by the Gamblers. He's had a rushing touchdown in this game too. So the game, Houston kicked a 59-yarder too. So yeah, Browns hit from 58 and 59. Holy crap. So, it's been one of those games, but it's close, and it's a 3-point margin at the moment. So I will come back to that towards the end of our show here to see if we get a final score. That game started at 8 o'clock Eastern. So, well, yeah, I mean, Louisville, Houston has had their troubles themselves, and Louisville's been playing them a little close, but they jumped on them quick, scoring, 16 points. So you got to give Louisville a lot of credit for what they did, but and Coach is right. They have a chance to be a really good team, and they nearly beat Birmingham, which is why I'm kind of shocked that they're 0-3 despite all of that. I mean, of course we want them.
Orlando's to two of them. I mean, for clarity.
Yeah, Orlando's 2 of them. But,
injuries too.
And Birmingham played St. Louis pretty good too. I mean, it didn't start out that way,
right?
But neither team was actually playing very well last week in the Dome. Both quarterbacks, Frost, they benched him because, he was, they actually know their starting quarterback in St. Louis. They benched him, and then Frost came in the game, but then he threw 2 interceptions. So, and then Matt Corral threw 2 interceptions, one of them a pick 6. So, it's been kind of touch and go for Birmingham themselves, looking at their schedule. I mean, my goodness gracious, Matt Corral was supposed to be, the stability in that offense, coming back. He did go 16 of 33 for 252 and 2 touchdowns, but then you got those 2 interceptions in there. And, they were not very good passes either. They were, here, you take the ball, or again, you had defenders jumping routes, then telegraphing what he was doing. So I think Orlando has a tremendous opportunity this week to really start the turnover thing. The only turnover I think that Orlando has actually picked up, they've had a couple of interceptions, but they really haven't been turnover happy. Like the margin that they have is positive, but it's not very large.
Right. And part of that, one of those is a special teams takeaway on top of it.
Yeah, the fumbled kickoff to start the season. So, they really haven't turned the ball over much, nor have they had the defense turn it back to them. So this is an opportunity, I think, this week to look at the film from St. Louis and get those tendencies in, because Corral was really making some very bad mistakes. And that could put receivers on an island and have secondary, the corners and the safeties jumping routes and possibly running back some pick sixes. It's an interesting opportunity that Orlando has to turn up the defensive side of the ball. Again, you look at the rushing, Birmingham only ran for 65 yards. Now, I know 65 yards in any professional football game is, it's tough running, but I mean, let's see, Anthony McFarland only ran the ball 13 times. Most guys, are going to get more like 17, 18, 19 carries, so to my point, they're one dimensional. I mean, when you look at it, there's 252 passing. Well, yeah, 243 actually was the total yards on it, and then 65 rushing. So you're only looking at a little over 300 yards of total offense. That's not super explosive. And also you got to figure the speed of the game too, because the clock is running constantly as well. So, but there's a tremendous opportunity to, again, keep Birmingham one dimensional and get Corral to throw to people in white jerseys that are not his, and get some turnovers here. And it's really just going to take some hawkish play to the ball, which Orlando's not really done a lot in the secondary. Now they can run to a ball when there's a ball carrier. Don't get that twisted. They see somebody running with a ball, they're all zooming in on him, and they're making some good tackles in the open field. We've seen a lot of that this season so far, but we haven't really seen a whole lot of super exciting pass breakups in man coverage or one-on-one matchups on the corners. Not a whole lot of that yet. So there's a tremendous opportunity here, because like we've seen, Corral will leave a guy hanging out to dry, and next thing you know, he's watching a guy scamper into his end zone. So I want to see that this week.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying is, if the Storm defense having to corral the ball is important. And if they make that work, you can banks that they'll get the victory.
No, we do not gnaw on our kitty.
So you know,
Mr.
Of course, the biggest. No, I got your reference. The biggest storyline, perhaps, going into this game is, of course, what we have mentioned to the Stormtroopers in the past already about the master and the student. I asked Coach Becht about that in this week's call.
To Orlando fans as Stormtroopers on the show, so it seems too obvious an opportunity to talk about you as the master from a coaching perspective, facing AJ as the student. How excited are you for that pairing?
I am excited. I'd be lying if I'm not. I mean, I think he'd be too. I mean, I think, privately, we're both probably telling our buddies and the people we know and trust that we want to kick this guy's ass, right? That's kind of what it is. I mean, why not? But, listen, I also, got a tremendous amount of respect for AJ. I mean, this guy helped me, win a lot of games in St. Louis for 2 seasons. I had to really recruit and get him to come play in our league, man, and bring him here. And he listened and bought in and worked out well for him. I'm glad, he was able to continue his career in the NFL. And obviously, I guess the most recent thing is just the whole separation part of it. I mean, listen, I mean, I think the most difficult thing is, AJ was definitely still talented enough to play. But, when we get a certain age, I mean, like, there's only one quarterback, right? Like, there's so many guys that are trying to get a shot. And I just felt like after 2 seasons, we and myself as a staff, we started to figure out how to do this thing. And we wanted to help some other guys, and unfortunately, for us, we just, we wanted to make the switch. And I know AJ still wanted to play, and I get it, and I think, the original plan was going into that second season was, hey, this was the last go around, right? So, but everybody, it's competitive juices, man. AJ's a competitor, man. I mean, he's been a competitor his whole life. He's a competitor now as a coach. I see him on the sidelines and I hear him, I listen to him. Everything that comes out of his mouth since he took the job, I've watched or listened to it. So I know him. I know AJ, right? So, and he knows me too, I think, but I may have kept some things under my sleeve for this game. So, but yeah, really excited for it, man. I think it's great. And it's going to be a fun one, man. Looking forward to it, for sure.
BP, I got to say it up front. This is just a fantastic pairing. The student and master thing, which I could tell that coach digs the Stormtroopers thing, just like anybody else we put it in front of. But the other part, for those that may not follow the UFL as closely, right, this is a coach who helped bring up another franchise. Now he's trying to make a mark to bring a new one. Meanwhile, on the other side, his former guy is trying to help a team reestablish what was a UFL dynasty at one point. I've already made the comment about Cole Schneider having to keep a jeweler on retainer. Okay, it was with this team. They're trying to come back to glory after, the DC Defenders, who were the descending champions last year, won it after they had their stretch to earn the dynasty. There's a lot going on in this football game, regardless of the fact that Birmingham is 1-2.
Well, and you also have to figure too that AJ McCarron is also a disciple of Nick Saban. And I'm not going to try to put some strange voodoo on this one here, but the Saban effect is real. And most people that are a branch of the Saban tree have some sort of magical success gene in them. It happened to Jimbo Fisher at Florida State. It didn't happen at Texas A&M, but it happened at Florida State. Not long he won a national championship in 2013. Well, I guess was it Les Miles was another one. Off the Saban tree. So you kind of see where Nick Saban has a successful plant in a guy like AJ McCarron, who, was one of his quarterbacks, and now he's the coach. And let me tell you something. What an excellent move. You want to talk about some excellent moves that the UFL made in hiring staff? AJ McCarron was a no-brainer to be a coach in this league. Not only is he, a younger guy who can relate to these players, but he's a recent player. It's not like, Rick Neuheisel, I love the energy, but, he's an ancient one in comparison to AJ McCarron. So this guy's had recent real-time experience playing in the UFL for a coach like Anthony Becht, who's got real-time experience with managing teams in this league. So you can't not say that McCarron isn't taking the Saban effect and blending it with the Becht effect and applying a lot of those principles to his own team. It would be absolutely senseless to say that there's not a little bit of Becht in McCarron and the way he's running it. And I'm glad Anthony's actually listened to what McCarron says. McCarron can get a little foul mouth in the locker room now. He can get he can get a little dirty. He cusses like a sailor sometimes, but he's a football player and he's a player's coach. And, that's how he connects. So I'm looking forward to an extremely entertaining coaching duel between the two of them, but you have to give the advantage to Becht on this one. And yeah, it's home cooking, but fry it up, baby. Throw the eggs on over easy, because Becht, has got the experience. He's got most of his staff with him. So everybody else that knows about AJ McCarron is also working on Anthony Becht's staff right now. So there's a lot of people who know what they're up against and would know, maybe not how he'd coach a game, but if he were at quarterback, they'd know what he'd do. And I'm sure there's some application to his players on that one. So, this is going to be a fun chess match to watch. And I believe the game is on Fox, so we're not going to get as much of the coach in and out, which, thank God. A side note. Can we not do that, ESPN? Please, can we back off of that a little bit? Fox is doing a great job with the way they're covering it. They do the sideline interviews. Jake Butt's doing a really good job on the sidelines, but it's not as invasive. ESPN makes it feel like they're up their nose, and I'm kind of put out by that.
I am too.
Can we leave that alone?
I'll put it this way. I feel better about them experimenting with different things and to see what people might like and seeing what the fans might enjoy. Yeah. I'm digging that more than I am the knee-jerk overtime rule change reaction to the fans, right? Yeah. They're trying things. The fans don't like it. Pull back. I get it. That's a good thing to do, right? At some point, Chris Berman was just a dude on a field with a microphone because they wanted to try to see if a live remote from a field would be cool. And now there's so many exclusive rights to fields post games. It's difficult to do in bowl games. Like, trust me, I've tried at times. But the punchline being, to get back to it, you mentioned who would have advantage. I agree that Beck with experience certainly is something to be said about it. But where I think AJ McCarron might be uniquely qualified to make this game truly good is to stop and corral his quarterback in from making those turnovers. I did it again. I'm sorry, BP. But because as a former quarterback, he could be like, dude, okay, corral, let's come here, buddy. They're going to get after you.
Yeah.
Figure it out. Watch some film of Plummer as if you were a defensive player and see things he does when things are under duress, right? Don't bother looking at that screen because that was perfection in motion. I'm not expecting you to model that. Yes, I brought up the screen again, BP. I apologize. But at least I didn't tell somebody to shut up twice in 2 sets of 5 minutes. But all of the above to say, I think that puts a very different dynamic on how this game could go. Obviously, the trenches is where it starts. That's the cake to any bit of the football game in any level such that it is. But where the icing starts to flavor these two cakes, such as they are. Shouts to Emery Hunt, by the way, on the Duval dive for now having the cake analogy in my head. But for these two cakes being served up, keeping the icing sweet by not turning the ball over, I think is the next hugest factor. Obviously, again, a simple element in football, but when your guy has had multiple turnovers and had a pick six like last week and is going to be facing, Josh Meekins, Keyshawn Banks, Isaiah Buggs, and more, Tavante Bennett, a thing in limited snaps last week where he made some excellent plays.
Beckett, I'm telling you, TB.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, well, and they have some guys that they're going to have to cover too, because, Jaden Mickens, 15 catches, 187 yards. Deion Kane, 10 receptions, 170 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Ross, 11 catches, 136 yards. 4 touchdowns between the 3 of those guys. And you sprinkle in a little Jordan Thomas. He's got another
Jordan
touchdown.
Thomas returning. Well, he doesn't return to Orlando this week, but we had a lot of fun watching him when he was a Guardian. Talked to him a few times too. Super cool guy, by the way.
Yeah. So, I mean, but you've got your big 3 in Mickens, Kane, and Ross that, those are your threats right now. Those are Corral's favorite targets. Deion Kane, leading all the players right now in distance with a longest of 67. So, Birmingham, we saw this. They're capable of the chunk play. As we saw with Louisville, they were also very capable of the chunk play. So, our corners are really going to have to keep everything in front of them this week, because when Matt Corral is on, he's going to hit those guys, and that's where you're going to run into some problems right now. So the biggest thing, and you alluded to this too, is to keep the pressure on up front.
Yep.
You're going to have to get Corral into a position where he's uncomfortable in the pocket. He's more of your prototypical pocket passer than most in this league. Now, he will run the ball. He's not afraid to run the ball, but let's just say he's not as fleet-footed. This is a pretty even matchup in terms of quarterback mobility is Plummer and Corral. They're not the fastest guys on the field, but they will run. So, you're going to have to make your edges, box him in, make sure that you're getting good deep penetration into the backfield. Keyshawn Banks is probably going to have a field day if he blows through a block. So I would expect him to be in the backfield a lot of it. If you can make that happen and get Corral uncomfortable and force him to make the errant throws, which he did a lot of that in St. Louis. He was making some throws that's like, come on, bro, you should know better. Don't be throwing off your back foot like that, because what's going to happen? A guy in another jersey is going to pick it up, and it ain't yours. So he doesn't react well to pressure. He's made some split decisions that were not very good and that led to turnovers or very errant throws that ended drives. So pour the pressure on it. Make sure that the front 4 or front 7 even are getting him to a position where he's not happy with what he sees. He's got to make a check down, force him to do the underneath throws, take away the chunk play, take away the deep game so those receivers are not on islands, and do what we have been doing, but again, more of it. And I know Coach Beck has probably seen his cardiologist since the last time we've talked, and he's probably he's probably telling these guys, look, keep it in front of you, but for God's sake, keep him out of the red zone. Yeah. Even though they're not running the ball as efficiently as most teams would figure, they're still got that scoring capability. They're capable of putting on 25 plus points a game. So keep it in front of you, but keep them out of the scoring zone. Force them into those field goal situations. Orlando's been really good at doing that this year, keeping them out of the end zone. Got to play that lockdown defense, but I think they need to stop bending. It's time for the bend to have a much more severe stiffness, and you need to straighten it out and be the wall, not as pliable as you have been. And for God's sake, cover the middle.
Yeah. Well, and I think another piece too, if I'm AJ McCarron, I've seen the Micah Abrahams get too aggressive. I'm going to double move him. I'm going to do things like that too, to get Corral's confidence up to all the points you made. So like maybe the tensile strength of how you bend needs to be addressed, but you also need to corral how aggressive your defense is going to be. Crap. Now I'm not even trying to do it anymore, but keeping the defense under control too, picking your spots to be aggressive, maybe doing so on the outside isn't where you do it. Maybe getting Devontae Beckett involved in some blitz, maybe, seeing little things like that. I too see Keyshawn Banks being a big element to this, to open things up where Isaiah Buggs once again crawls in to get some tackles in the backfield as well.
Yeah. Well, and sorry, I got a game break for you real quick here. Louisville and Houston are tied as of this moment. 3:57 to go in the fourth, 22 apiece. So Louisville has added another field goal to tie this up. Let's see, 48-yarder from Brown. And that was at 10:10 on the clock. They haven't scored since then. So it's holding pat right now. And yeah, with that much time left, oh my God, we may have to wait for another overtime finish here. Let's see how that goes.
Well, hey, we know it won't end on a penalty now, right? That's the good news.
Look, if that game goes to overtime, Louisville better win it. I'm just saying. Just Louisville better win that damn game. But going back to Orlando, what they're going to have to do as we continue to break down this Birmingham game, they're outscoring their opponents 71-52. So, obviously you score more points, you're going to do it. But I mean, hey, they've been pretty good efficiently this season. 55 first downs, 29 of them in the air, 18 on the ground. So, there's a little evidence of some balance there. They're out rushing everybody, 84 rushing attempts to 51. However, they're not as efficient on their average. They're only getting 3.6 per rush. And I would like to see that average come up a little bit.
I wonder how much of that is goal line runs and short distance being a factor.
Yeah, I think that's probably damaging the average a little bit because, they've had a couple of first down conversions. 18 of them are rushing first down conversions. So how many of those are short? Passing yards, 690, and 8.4. So passing offense right now looking really good. I mean, the average per completion, I like this number, 11.9. However, their opponents right now they're giving up 12.7. And that's that part about that lockdown defense that they've got to work on. They've got to shorten that up. I would like to see that average drop below 10, in the next couple of games. Maybe not necessarily this week, but I'd like to see that average scooting down a little bit. That means you're playing a little bit more on the ball than you have been. But, when you look at it, the passing offense is done pretty well. It's not flashy, but it's effective. But you know what I'm going to tell you to do right now at this point? I know what's going to help make that passing game flashier, Kyle. I think you know where this is going, my friend, as we bring up my favorite sign that I'm going to start using for the rest of the season. Run the damn ball.
Respect the ground game. Run the damn ball.
Run the damn ball. I think you've actually got some very talented running backs. And if you grind this one out, Birmingham is not as big as Louisville, so you're not going to be getting an oversized matchup with the front. I think if you start playing a little smash mouth football against these guys and run to set up pass a little bit more, or throw them the change up, it doesn't necessarily have to be running off tackle the entire time. Run the stretch play, make the defense work, make them set the edge, right? Get your guys out in space because when Jayshon Corbin gets in space, he can take off.
Yep.
So do some more to get him the ball, but do it with a churning up ground game, that's going to make these guys get on their heels and let our receivers run free. Plummer does an excellent job of taking what the defense gives him. But I think if you give him more of a chunk to take, he can take it. Plummer has constantly referenced in media engagements about leaving meat on the bone. Well, I think part of the reason why they're leaving meat on the bone is they're too tentative calling the run plays. Let's run the ball a little more. You don't have to get in. For God's sake, we said this too. They got 3 tight ends. Run some more bigger sets. Make them earn it. Fight for it and get those guys on their heels. Make the safeties cheat up, and then beat them over the top, because you've got speedsters on the edge that can do that. We want to see KJ Hamler. We want to see Elijah Badger. We want to see them running those 40, 50-yard pass plays. But you're going to have to set those up, because, defenses are wise now to what Plummer's going to do, and they know that he's going to look for those open passing opportunities underneath and just dink and dunk. Well, the reason you're dinking and dunking is because you're not hitting them hard enough to make them want to back up. So, again, run the damn ball. Get it in their faces, make them fight for it, make them earn it. And I think to that scenario as well, the offensive line's got to block. We can't have safeties creeping up on short yardage plays that prevent touchdowns or 2-point conversions. They've got to hold their blocks.
Right.
No more lookout blocks, no more olays. Dig into the trenches, establish the line of scrimmage. Not just in pass pro, but in run blocking. Get down, get dirty, get low, and beat the hell out of these guys at the point of attack, so you can do what you want to do with your offense, because Orlando's capable of it. We need them to unlock that. Now, how much of that is practice and preparation and execution, we're not really sure, because of the nature of this league. But honestly, you don't know if you try, and you're 3-0 on the road. Make them pay for it. Run the damn ball.
By my count, they've averaged about 63, 64 yards or so per game running, which isn't awful considering the accelerated clock. I think the best thing from your perspective in your now famous approach to run the damn ball, such that it is, they showed an improvement facing a group of greater size, right?
Yeah.
I think they ran like 50 or so, 51 yards in game 2, and they had 74 as a team with 3 different runners this past week. It shows that they're committing more to it. I agree with you. There's some disengagement, maybe not holding blocks quite long enough. I know people keep saying protection problems. I'm not going to say you don't know ball or any of that, but let's just say people that know ball less than you, BP, are out there talking about, the line needs to protect better. I don't feel like the protection, air quotes, such as you're thinking of it, in keeping Jack Plummer from being sacked is necessarily the issue, right? I think it's a matter of finding the right holes, getting to the second level where appropriate, and making sure, again, that you go to the second level at the right time and not too soon.
Yeah, well,
and it's stuff, by the way,
and it's also making a decision.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's too much scampering in the backfield. We saw Plummer do that in earlier games where he wasn't quite committed to making a decision to run or throw the ball. And I think that's why you've got all of these folks that have been clamoring for DTR, because DTR will make that decision to run. Yes, he did prove that. But it doesn't matter who the quarterback is at that point. When you get into a situation where the pocket's collapsing, like we said, Plummer's not the most mobile guy out there, but when he makes the decision to run, it's a good one. Those 1,000 IQ plays, he's done it. So I think his clock has got to shorten up just a little bit more and just make the decision to run, or make the decision to find your check down a little sooner, and sometimes when he's making those reads, obviously he has to have it develop, because as we saw in the St. Louis game again with Birmingham, Corral wasn't making that decision. He was making it too quickly.
And let's be fair to Plummer. He's improved over each game, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, and he'll even tell you that too. His vision's getting better. He's gotten a lot more comfortable since starting, game 1. Here we're getting into game 4, and he's kind of in the zone right now. So, if you just maybe pick up the pace just a little bit, make that quicker decision to run when the pocket's collapsing. He's gotten better about that. Just a little bit more. Just give me a little bit more, 1% better every week. And he'll turn into by week 10. We're going to be talking about a much different quarterback and a much different offense that we talked about in week 1. The touchdown scoring drives that Orlando had in the Louisville game were some of the best executed drives they've had all season. I know the fans.
The single best play of the year so far, by the way, BP.
Yes. Oh, no, the single best play. But every touchdown drive that they had was the best execution that they've had all season, no matter what the play was, from the screen to KJ Hamler's touchdown sliding into the end zone.
Correct.
Say what you will about, the whole of the game, the drives where they scored those big touchdowns that were game-changing moments. If I'm the Becht effect, I'm highlighting those plays and I'm going, hey guys, this is exactly what we can do when we execute properly. We need to take whatever happened in these plays and we need to replicate that every moment, whether it's a mentality or whether it's a movement. Something has got to be replicated because they know they can do it, and they should have the confidence to know they can do it. It's just a question of executing.
The next goal is clearly consistency. And speaking of consistency and making a movement, as you say, we've consistently brought you the Storm Surge podcast, and now we want to make it into a movement by reminding you we'll be at Fast Eddie's in Jacksonville.
Yes.
The live edition of the halftime show and postgame as they do battle with the Stallions. That's right. By the way, special shouts to Fast Eddie's. I will be taking my happy behind right from UCF, doing stuff with Locked On UCF and UCF Night Zone. Shouts to Mikey G for that opportunity. Thank you for that. I'm going to get in my car. I'm going to meet BP at Fast Eddie's, and we're going to give you the show there live, just as we did last week. Granted, I will not be in the confines of the Kumo, as we call it here at the Student of the Game Studios. No, I will be on the shores of the St. John's enjoying a quality time at Fast Eddie's, and I am stoked for it, BP.
I'm so excited. Again, want to shout out to William and all of his team at Fast Eddie's Quick Meaties, just right off 295 on Bay Meadows Road in the Winn-Dixie Plaza. Great food, Mediterranean, Greek, Arabic fusion, you name it. It's from that part of the world, with some good old down-home Kentucky American and beer on tap. They not only serve some other great beers that you know and love, but they have a couple of local craft brews on tap. Just a really good place to listen to some rock, eat some great food, watch football. They're going to have the game on for us, so you'll be able to watch it with us. So it's not the biggest place in town, but if you happen to be in Happy Jacks on the shores and you're wondering what all the hubbub's about, we'll be in our little booth. You can come hang out with us, say hello. But we're doing sort of a goodwill mission to Jacksonville, since the Jaguars are going to be our happy neighbors next year. So we're kind of getting everybody fired up about the Orlando Storm in Jacksonville. I know you're probably thinking, well, gosh, guys, you should probably do this in Orlando sometime. Yeah, we will. But this was a good first stop because I do have a great relationship with them. They are planning to come down. Wiam and his son are planning to come down to watch a Storm game this year. So the mission has been offered there. The evangelism is increasing. And you got to understand, guys, Orlando's not all that far from Jacksonville. It's a short jaunt. And if I can make the trip, what's your excuse? So we're doing that up there in Duval, and that's going to be exciting. Again, the game starts at 4:00. We will break in live at the half and then live at post game, just as we did for the Louisville game. In the meantime and in between time, we'll be watching the game there, and you'll probably get a couple of social media pics and some other mischief while we're there, of course. But I'm super excited about that. Just a quick update on the Houston game right now. The clock is stopped with 1:40 to go and still tied at 22 apiece. So I don't think we'll get the final score by the time we sign off here, Kyle. But I might post something.
Somebody out there's getting some free football at the very least.
Somebody's probably going to get some free football at this rate, because I don't think this game's going to end in regulation with a winner. So we'll find out. I'm going to have to turn that on real quick. But nonetheless, excited about Birmingham. Excited about what we're going to see this week. We're trying to get that 4th straight win, and just settle in, do what we've done, do a little more of it, run the damn ball.
Oh,
That's all I got to say about it.
There we go.
Run the damn ball.
Make sure you carry the ball all the way to Fast Eddie's this Saturday as we're there doing the live remote. Good time. So with all that in mind, well, we don't have to do X Factors. We kind of already said them. So with all that in mind, BP, tell the world where you could be found.
On the Instagram at bp.onair. Also find us on Instagram at StormSurgeORL. Thank you, by the way, for 100 followers. We have eclipsed the century mark on Instagram. Thank you so much for following our social media there. Please, please, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I know you hear that all the time. oh, subscribe here, subscribe here. Well, let me tell you what that will do, because YouTube has this funny thing with newer people like us and smaller crowds and niche things like UFL. The more you subscribe and comment and get engaged, especially with our live streams, which are starting up, get your comments in, watch the video, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. The more you do that, the more it allows us to expand the good word about not only the Orlando Storm, but about the UFL in general. And it'll help you, because when you drive around Orlando and say, oh no, I haven't seen any marketing in Orlando, they don't seem to be advertising this team. What the hell do you think we're doing? Sitting here talking about it. And you're sitting there on your phone on the crapper watching YouTube videos, and you happen to be watching me right now with a crapper, weirdo. Hit the subscribe button, would you? And get the word out. And if you find other podcasts from the UFL that you like, subscribe to them too. That's only going to get people talking about the UFL a lot more. And then you won't have to drive around I-4 going, gee, they don't do enough marketing in Orlando. I wonder why I've never heard of the team before. Yet you're watching this podcast. Okay, that's it. Soapbox done. Oh, one more for good measure. Shut up. Okay, I said it.
I love that we're covering an Orlando team, because your Mickey Mouse impression there was pretty damn tight. But what better way, by the way, to draw in more subscribers than to call them weirdos and tell them to shut up? That's the beauty of this podcast. It's gonna work.
We're all on the internet. We're all weird anyway. Why not? Just name it and claim it.
I love every minute of it, BP. Don't you dare take that as criticism. I'm not hating. I'm appreciating. With all that in mind, of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my work covering the Jacksonville Jaguars on the Duval Dive on the Believe Podcast Network with my personal champion, Travis D. Holmes. Yeah, we even had the reference earlier with James Robinson being a Louisville King. How about that? And then, of course, my work covering UCF with Locked On UCF and UCF Night Zone. As well as my work covering the Orlando Magic. I hope the season doesn't end Friday. That would be nice. But yeah, a little bit of the lemon booty there, VP. I'm not gonna lie. But with all that being said, we will see you at Fast Eddie's on Saturday. Thanks to BP. Thanks to all you stormtroopers for keeping the thing running and making it grow as fast as it has in the short time that we've been doing this. But until next time, everyone. Class, this
Fight back. Fight back.